Given the starting point for the Cork footballers going into this season, Kevin, would you view what we've just seen as a very successful year for the Rebels?
Yeah, I think definitely a step in the right direction. You couldn't be other than disappointed leaving Croke Park last Sunday. But in the context of where we've been in Division 3, flirting with the Tailteann Cup this year, now establish ourselves mid-table Division 2 team, certainly the graph was going upwards as the season went on. So very happy in that context. Obviously, John Cleary, all of us, we want to be a regular Division 1 team competing for Sam Maguire. So that's still in the distance, let's say. But certainly, I think the team tactically, physically, preparation, their own attitudes, the setup now is all moving in the right direction.
How can Cork so build on and capitalise on what we've seen this year and that almost renewed sense of optimism within the county?
Yeah, well, I would have said it to both squads at the end of the year, both hurling and football, is we think we're at base camp. The attitude is good, the fitness levels are up, the S&C is kicking in, but that's base camp. That's only going to allow you to compete. It's not going to put any silverware up on the table. But I think the next phase for the footballers is having settled things at the back, having set up rather negatively, like the modern game. It has taken us a while to embrace the modern game. I think the next phase now will be attack and getting more expansive in our attacking play. And all the counties that have gone defensive have gone through that. They've all had to settle at the back first and then get more progressive as time went on. So I think the next phase for us now is increase the scoring rate right throughout the team and to be more expansive as we go. But I would still accept that the first thing to do was to batten down the hatches in defence. And I think that was done very well this year.
What's your own thoughts on the way that football has evolved over the last couple of years? Like you said about it there, it's very kind of you set up from the back, and we saw it in Croke Park for Cork against Derry, and Derry are known for setting up as they do. They're quite a disciplined team in that sense. What's your own thoughts on the way football has evolved?
Yeah, it might seem like a contradiction or a paradox, but I have a twin track approach to that. When I go to see Cork footballers play, the objective on that day is to win the match. And that is John Cleary's task, is to win football matches for Cork, albeit that we know it's probably a three-year project. It'll take time to get out of Division 2 into Division 1 and so on. As a spectator, I've said it, I think football is unwatchable. I think I go to support Cork as a supporter or because it's my job. I wouldn't be going to an inter-county football match for a spectacle or for something that would blow your mind away in terms of imagination. So I separate them. I want Cork to win matches. We must play the modern game. We must set up defensively, but the rules are wrong. So I think the game has outgrown the rules that we have now. And I think it's the job of the rule makers to fix the game. It's not the Cork manager's job to fix football. It's his job to make Cork compete and win. But then if I put on my other hat as an administrator, as a member of the GAA, as somebody who goes to Congress, I think that's where you fix it. And I think other sports have got there. Every other sport, really, every other field game has some form of an offside rule, and we don't. Now, our offside rule will be very different to any other sport. It will almost be offside in reverse, and that the other sports have offside to prevent players going ahead of the ball. We need an offside rule to keep them up there. So I'd be very interested in proposals about always keeping 3 or 4 players in the opposition half. Now, that would worry me when I come back, and think of, junior football throughout the country and a referee having eyes in the back of his head to monitor that. So I come to my own conclusion so far, albeit maybe an uninformed one, that it's the kick out. And I would have everybody take up their positions for the kick out. And then after that, if the corner forward wants to run back 50 times in a match into the corner back position, well, we'll see how long that will last. So I really think it's a rule change. But when I watch Cork, I'm not there for a spectacle. We're there to win. But then you have to think of the good of the game overall now that Cork are out. And I would say we need rule changes.
Do you think we're going to see movement in that in the next couple of years? Because you're not the only person to say that, Kevin.
Yeah, well, Jarlath Burns is coming in as president now in February, and I'd say he'll take a pretty expansive approach to that. He himself was involved in rules in the past, and he would have probably been behind the midfield mark, which was a success, relatively speaking. So another interesting fact that people mightn't be aware of is counties can only bring proposed rule changes 1 year in 5. So Cork can only bring a playing rule change, book 2 of the official guide, the playing rules. We can only bring a change once every 5 years. So 2025, expect a plethora of proposals countrywide to say football. Now, that might be the best outcome either, because they won't be synchronized or sympathetic to each other. So I think Rules Advisory will probably be ahead, or sorry, the Rules Review Committee will probably be ahead of that and try to have some uniform approach to it. But have no doubt I'll be supporting any change that opens up the field more. And I suppose the one I go back to most of all, Kieran, is the most simple one, is a contest for the kick out. And it doesn't have to be a 50-50 contest. When John Kearns was in goal for Cork 30 years ago, he wasn't kicking out a 50-50 ball, he was kicking out a 60-40 one. But I don't want to see a 90-10 one, or I don't want to kick out 5 yards, having, you know, gone to see the best fielders in the country and the ball isn't kicked out to them. So I come back to very simplistic approach, the kick out, positioning of players from the set piece, which is the kick out, and then maybe leave the game, move on, because we need innovation too. And we can't all be anti-coaching and wanting to go back to the old days of catch and kick, because we know that's pretty appalling when you look back at it too. So there's no one wanting to go backwards. I would just love more contests in the field. That's why I go to see a match. I'll go to see contests. I don't go to see 15 on either side of the pitch.
Bring it back to Cork for a second. So Kevin Walsh was a huge addition to the Cork football backroom team this year. Came on board as a coach with John Cleary's management team. When he came on board, I don't think it was known what the length of his time with Cork would be. He's after one season now. Would we see Kevin back involved next year, or what's the latest there, Kevin?
Yeah, I expect to, and John Cleary has a 3-year term, whereas Kevin doesn't. Kevin was involved for this year, and we'll sit down and review it now. But certainly the players, the management, and the county board all want Kevin Walsh involved next year. We just haven't really spoken that far, because when people travel that far and train into county teams, especially in the back room, it's generally year by year you review it. But we're certainly hoping, I would say Kevin's already thinking about next year, to be honest, and what we're going to do with the team. And he was a huge benefit, and he would have been someone we would have shortlisted in the past for the senior job. Actually, he would have been someone we would have always considered and talked about. But it was John actually went about it and brought him on board. And so John deserves all the credit for that. Kevin, you see, will work the divisions. He, having been with Sligo and Galway, he's a fierce grasp of Division 1 to Division 4 football. So they're insights that not that many people in Cork would have. And I suppose we're very isolated down south as well. And that he, you know, when we played Mayo and Roscommon, sure he knew them the same as Cork and Kerry know each other. There was huge benefits by getting someone in, and then still having John Corkman as manager of the team. So you couldn't buy how lucky we were at how all of that came together.
It was widely claimed that Kevin Walsh was a shrewd acquisition, and it looks like the Cork GAA even another shrewd acquisition, Kevin. I see there former Bantry Blues footballer Niall Toomey is the new head of games development with Cork. Can you tell us more about this role and what you hope Niall will bring to the role?
Well, I suppose there's a twin track approach there, in that Kevin O'Callaghan, who served in that job honourably over the last 10-15 years, he moved to a job in MTU before Christmas last year. And I suppose the fact that we knew there was increased funding coming in, it became a really important appointment and role we had to fill, because our funding budget is doubling over, you know, immediately, basically, thanks to increased investment from both Croke Park, Munster Council, and then our own increased funding we'll be putting into it. So you're going from 6-7 coaches on the ground up to 14 in the short term, and probably 17-18 when we fill a few more roles. So this is a department that will ultimately have 20 people working in it. So we had to go very diligently about filling that role, because, you know, being a manager of 6 or 7 is one job, being a manager of 20 is something else. So we feel Niall has those skills in management from his time in the army and with civil defence. And he'd be very familiar to West Cork people, obviously. And Niall thinks strategically, and we consider this a strategic role. This will not be a tracksuit role. This will be strategy and managing people to get the best out of them. So I've known Niall a long time. Obviously, I followed him as a footballer with Bantry, but he wouldn't be too far away from me now in his new home in Ballinascarthy. So he's done the hard yards. He's coach officer for his club, has done underage chairman, has trained Cork minor teams, has trained Cork senior teams, is involved with senior development squads. He's done the rounds. So he would have a very good grasp of what is needed at underage level. So we think he's a great appointment. Can't wait until he starts on Monday fortnight.
And his role kind of feeds into the announcement too from Cork GAA that applications are open for 8 GAA games development coordinators. And Darren, I suppose, in addition to the 6 GDAs already in Cork. So that'll be 14 people on the ground, like you said there, Kevin, and more to come. So tell us what's going to happen here, because this looks like a really exciting development for the whole county.
Yeah, and what I love most of all is that the clubs notice it the minute it starts, because I was GDA in West Cork back 2009, and I had 30 clubs under my remit. Would say 30 clubs to service the 6 Beara clubs and the 25-26 Carbery clubs. But look, it was great. I loved it, but you could never get out to each club as often as you would like. That ratio of 1 to 30. Now it's around 1 to 25. This will bring it to around 1 to 10 or 1 to 11. And that'll mean, for example, West Carbery or East Carbery. Take East Carbery, for example. You can put someone into an area like the Clonakilty area now, where everybody will be in touching distance of each other, and he can run joint workshops, and he or she can base themselves in Clonakilty School and service clubs around it. Whereas when you go to 20 clubs, you've gone into another kind of geographical area. Whereas I feel now, if you look at these 14 people and you take 14 towns and a hinterland to a town, you've now got a lovely community that know each other, that while they're rivals, they will share workshops and so on. So I just feel it makes it attainable now that a club will have a real link with their GDA, GDC on the ground, notwithstanding the great job people were doing. But simply, if you more than double numbers, you should be able to more than double the service people are getting.
And that's good news for the clubs. It's good news for the coaches. It's good news for the players in these clubs too, isn't it?
Yeah. And while we will always be reliant on the volunteer, this is to unplug the potential in the volunteer. So we know that under an Rossa GAA club will still rest on the shoulders of who is taking the under 13s or 14s and what are they coaching them. But this allows us to give that person a better service. So it's almost the coaches will be getting the better service, because the future of any club will rely on the people in that club. It won't rely on someone visiting once a week or once a month. But maybe the person, if they can come more often, can support the coach education, the development of those mentors to empower them to do it on the ground. So we're never replacing the volunteer. This almost is better news for the coaches than the players, because our job is supporting coaches, because only coaches from a given club can really solve their own problems.
And hopefully when all those coaches get the work, that players' big ambition is to get up to Páirc Uí Caoimh and play. But looking at Páirc Uí Caoimh with a different code for a second, the hope is that we can host the Clash of Champions, Munster and Crusaders on February next. That's February 2024, Kevin. All we're waiting for is the green light. So fill us in the background to this and what needs to happen for Páirc Uí Caoimh to get that green light.
Yeah, so obviously there isn't permission under rule for field sports other than Gaelic games to take place on GAA facilities nationwide. However, subsequent to the Liam Miller one, which you remember caused a major controversy at the time, the rule/policy was changed whereby Central Council, the governing body of the GAA, can give permission to county grounds only to host games from another sport that are of national significance and have a one-off nature to them. So we wouldn't be able to do a home and away arrangement with a soccer or rugby club, but a one-off game, national importance, you can apply to Central Council for permission. We did so for the South Africa rugby game and got a unanimous approval without question, without objection. So we're hopeful now that we're back round two, over a year later, and over a year later in terms of the timing of the matches. And we're hopeful of a positive response, but it's pure democracy in the GAA, to be fair. It will go to the floor in Central Council on Saturday. It will get a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether it meets those criteria. I'm certain it does meet those criteria. It is a one-off game by its nature. It's not a tournament game of any kind. It's one-off. And it is also of significance because we saw what the last game did in terms of national coverage, in terms of the spotlight on the stadium. And of course, there's vital commercial reasons behind it as well. We need to do business inside that stadium. But I think the feel-good factor from the last game was just incredible. It was such a good thing for the GAA to promote our stadium amongst a non-GAA crowd and to show that, we're open, and if we see sport being played, it's a good thing for all citizens, basically.
Almost in the story of Munster season, that win against South Africa in Páirc Uí Caoimh was one of the turning points, and it got Munster up and running, and we saw what happened since. But you touched it there as well, the commercial I suppose benefits for Cork GAA how important is it still for Cork GAA to have sporting events like this, to get concerts into Páirc Uí Caoimh, just to start, well, to keep repaying that debt?
Yeah, and we look at this in the context of a concert. This is worth about 2/3 of a concert to us, albeit that it's a much less intrusive event because you have your pitch back playable the day after, which you wouldn't have after a concert. But these are absolutely essential. All our business plans have this commercial activity plugged into them. And they're almost like windfalls, because I'm moving to a stage now where we've got to be careful with those business plans, because concerts and rugby match are almost windfalls. They're not something you should plan for. They're not something you should schedule. Concerts are very hit and miss. No concerts in Croke Park or Páirc Uí Caoimh this year due to the nature of touring and the size of the acts that come. So you'd see very vibrant concerts in Musgrave Park and in the Marquee, but they're below our level. Then you might see another one in Croke Park, which might be a capacity too high for our level. So we just find ourselves in that middle ground, as well as the GAA season take up a significant time of the year. So I'm very much for those concerts being really important, but us having a working business plan to reach break even on the years we don't have them. So might seem a contradiction in terms that I'm talking about the times we don't have them, but our floor should be not having those. And then they should be windfall events that will allow us to reinvest in the stadium in the longer term. But they're absolutely vital. And I think vital for this city as well. You see, there's so few major events in Cork City. I think that's why the rugby games really took off, is that people are starved for action down south. When you think of what's available in Dublin in terms of concerts or sporting events. So I think it's brilliant, just even for the people of Cork, to bring that rugby match to Cork. I think people down here deserve a break as well in terms of the miles they have to drive to sporting events.
The hope is that Páirc Uí Caoimh will get the green light for that game next February, and no doubt that would be a sellout too. But sticking with Páirc Uí Caoimh for a second as well, Kevin, we saw earlier this year that you got a 12-month repayment break on the debt. Can you explain to us the importance of that and break it down into layman's terms, what it means?
Yeah, and that wasn't misreported, but it left out some critical details when it was reported. And to be fair, it was Office Central Council reported, gave a kind of a headline summary, but I can add a bit more context for you now, and delighted to do so. So Páirc Uí Caoimh debt, over 20 million due to Bank of Ireland, over 10 million due to Croke Park. So debts of over 30 million. We'll hope to lower that by the sale of Kilbarry in the region of 6 to 10 million over the coming year. So you'll be left with, an overhang of probably 25 million after that. Now, Cork County Board, I view them globally. I view the stadium and the county board as the same thing, but technically they're different entities. Even though I work for both, they're both governed, albeit that we have a stadium board, but my role is dual. I never put one against the other. So Cork County Board have an annual payment plan with Croke Park on the Croke Park debt, the 10 million part, let's say. And we have a deal with them where we pay back 500,000 per annum from Cork County Board funds to pay that part. And the stadium attempts to pay back the other 20 million to Bank of Ireland. So we got a moratorium from Croke Park on paying that 500,000 back to them. But it wasn't a moratorium as such. That 500,000 went straight across the road into the stadium to pay the interest on the stadium loan to Bank of Ireland. So it was a moratorium from Croke Park, from Cumann Class Scale, from the GAA, to allow us put that money into the stadium debt, because the stadium debt couldn't be met by the stadium due to the lack of concerts. So that was the reason. So it wasn't that we got a holiday from Cumann Class Scale. They effectively are waiving their right to their money for 12 months to allow us to focus all our repayments on the stadium debt. So a moratorium, technically, yes, but it's not saving us any money down here. We're simply putting that money across to the stadium. And the stadium has capital repayments at the moment of 250,000 per quarter, plus interest. So you're lucky at $1.5 million at the moment. That's going to 2 million a year for the stadium. A stadium that does well to make $1 million profit in a concert year, and it struggles to break even in a non-concert year. So you'll see all those numbers are very challenging. They don't particularly stack up, but we are still meeting all our repayments with Bank of Ireland, which is essential because we have a good interest rate. And Croke Park have given us a holiday on paying them back so that we can focus our efforts on the stadium. So that's it as such. So Croke Park have given a moratorium, but we don't feel the benefit of it because we're simply putting that money into bank repayments.
You just spoke there about the difference in terms of repaying back, and there's still a significant difference there. So how can Cork GAA bridge that gap over the next couple of years? Or we've spoken before, it could take 2 decades or so, Kevin, to get this stadium paid off. So how can we bridge that gap?
Yeah, we're at a stage now where hopefully the sale of Kilbarry will happen over the next. Well, look, we'd like it to be the next 6 months, but definitely the next 12. But on board Planal, I have a backlog of cases now to hear, so we're in that queue. I expect after that there'll be a long-term financing arrangement, considered by the county board, the clubs, the stadium board, our core again, the GAA. And I'd expect that there'll be a long financing arrangement set then to allow the stadium breathe and to allow it be met over a long period. So yeah, definitely in 2 decades, as you say, it'll be that kind of an arrangement. So we kind of have a 2028 as a midterm review point, when everything will be looked at again. But in the short, ahead of that, I expect a long-term global mini solution, would say, to come. A solution would be for the debt to disappear, but I'm talking about in terms of solution of a sustainable approach to it, because the stadium are difficult buildings to run. That you don't see any property developer going out there building his own stadium and trying to make money out of it. I believe they're largely public goods, and you look at the games we run through the stadium, which would be low attendances, the Camogie games, the ladies football, a lot of the club games, even Cork League games. If you had a commercial hat on, you were meeting businessman targets, you'd reconsider all of that. But we have to put on our other hat. Then our job is to promotion of games in the county. Our job is not to generate profits. So there's a dual-edged sword there. It's difficult to balance it at times. But ever in doubt, I'd always err on the side of the games of the community. That's why we are delighted to see all of those games in there, albeit that they're small attendances. But then you start to become a little bit less commercial, but so be it. We'll pay the consequences of that in the longer term.
Is the naming rights of Páirc Uí Caoimh still on the table?
Yeah, so we have a twin track approach to that. We're still pursuing naming rights. We're now have engaged with Druid. Druid are an international, sporting rights company, but they're founders of roots in Ballinhassig. So we're 4 months into a project with them now, where we're taking a new approach to it, and in terms of establishing multiple partnerships, in terms of having an inclusion partner, an innovation partner, a sustainability partner, a grassroots partner, and an excellence partner. So you may have a company and you may not want to write us a check for X for naming rights, and you may not want your name over the building, but you may like to become our sustainability partner or our inclusion partner. So we're breaking up the naming rights package now, and we are talking to several companies. We have shortlists way into double figures of companies we're having meetings with face-to-face at the moment in phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 meetings. And we're very confident that that's going to land and would be a more sustainable approach than landing a silver bullet in terms of having multiple partners on multiple projects. And the GAA, how many initiatives there is for people to partner with us on. So I've never been more hopeful about naming rights, but not in the traditional manner, in a manner regardless of what the name of the stadium might be, but you have multiple partners, as we do already in the county board. You'll see with multiple partners from Sports Direct, Tony's, Co-op Superstores, Bond Secures, the league sponsors, Red FM. We have Cork Credit Unions. We have Kiri's band partners. So we've several partners there. You think of all the advertising hoarding in Páirc Uí Caoimh. So we've never been more commercial in that aspect. We're looking at naming rights in that light now. And the issue with partnerships is you can then look at CSR budgets in terms of community and social responsibility or corporate social responsibility that they may have. And you can go a little bit less commercial and a bit more holistic and developmental, which is actually what our values are. But very interesting. We still have a twin track approach though, but we're still meeting companies offering to put their name on the door for a price. So there's that very commercial approach is happening at the same time. So we hope to land something in that definitely in the next year, 6 months.
And finally, Kevin, we're heading into the club championships, the favourite part of the year for so many people right across the county. When these championships were revamped a couple of years ago, could you envisage the success that they've become? Because we've really competitive footballing hurling championships in all grades, and they've found their feet now in terms of promotion relegation over the last couple of years. So it's a really exciting part of the season for the club players. They can take centre stage now.
Yeah, I would say yes, I did believe it would be like this because I just have fundamental faith in the games of hurling and football as being good games, albeit that football has some problems that need to be fixed. And I also have a fundamental belief that people will watch a competitive game at any level. So a game out in the front garden of hurling or football that is competitive, the result means something. I think I'll go to see that game. So then I think if you extrapolate that, you've got a good product and a game that people will go to see. So you look at the things we did in the county championships, brought in relegation, reduced the numbers of teams, gave regular meaningful games in group stages. So I just think it's a follow-on that you couldn't fail with that model. No, it is a bit tight, and there isn't a day in the week goes by that I don't have an argument with someone about the split season and says, I give the inter-county lads 2 weeks more, because they simply don't understand the numbers. Ask the Newcestown lads, ask them, do they want to restrict, do they want to tighten the championship by another 2 weeks? I don't know how many days a week they have to play. So I think there's an awful lack of understanding nationally on what Cork face in terms of our dual programme, in terms of the fact that we have senior clubs with 5 adult teams, and they have to play in reverse sequence. The seniors have to play first before the junior Bs are graded. And the West Cork board are waiting for us to play the senior team before the junior team can play, not to mind the junior B and C team. So in that context, I lie awake at night worried that somebody's going to take another 2 weeks in August off us, because with the volume of games we have, we won't have floodlights at the end of September to play so many group games. But I love it. It's the highlight of my time in this job. I just think it's so healthy for clubs to have a regular games program. Now, I do see clubs coming to grips with it as well, and people are talking about guys going to America and, you know, not training as early in the year in January. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with starting in February or March, no training instead of January. The pitches aren't ready in January. And for people crying about lads going to the States, as long as I'm in my club, people have gone overseas and we're welcome back thereafter. I think it's healthy for people to travel. And for those in a state of panic now about all the Cork hurlers going to the States, any one of them I'm talking to, they're simply talking about what week they're coming home for the club championships. So if they're the kind of players we're producing that go away for a bit of the summer and their only objective is to come back for a club championship, I think we're in a safe place. So I do see some of the negative parts to it, like, you know, the wait for championship for clubs. I do think playing a championship game early in the year in the past was very healthy for clubs as well. It made you all wake up. You know, if you're the championship in April, it kind of brought the whole club into account. So there's a few small negatives, but I just wish I was a player now to get those regular games in my calendar, set in stone, build a life around that then, and still have a healthy relationship with Gaelic games. So really happy with it, albeit that we'd always look to tweak again if there was any, you know, in a couple of years' time, you might see changes that we would do.
Brilliant stuff, Kevin. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Karen.